What is up, everybody? I'm going to share with you today my aim training process over the next few weeks. The reason is because on Sunday, the coming Sunday, I'll be playing in my first Deadlock tournament, and I hope it's the first of many. I think there's a lot of transferable skills from Quake to Deadlock. In particular, I think the in-fight outplaying, the projectile aiming, all of the tracking that's involved, and the fast pace, the crazy dynamic play, I think is all like kind of Quakey in some sense. And so I think it's going to be somewhat suitable for me to play this game, and I feel more at home with the aiming style than I do typically with tactical FPS. Even though I've played those all my life, I'm obviously a past Quake pro and have competed at the top level in Quake in so many different occasions over the many years, so it seems way more comfortable. So I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I hope that I can take it more seriously and that there's a path that makes sense for me to do that, so I can continue to push the envelope and have a good reason to create more competitive related content, which is of course the lifeblood of this channel. So with that said, let's jump into what the aiming process is going to be and why. Now, if you are familiar with aim trainers and aim training and all of that, you're going to already know exactly probably what this video is all about. So this is going to be more aimed at people that are newer to aim training, and they're also like, okay, I like Deadlock a lot. I want to understand how maybe I could get better aim in Deadlock, and so what should I do and how should I do it? So for those of you who are in that camp, I'm going to be using the Voltaic daily improvement method. This has been, I think, lauded as perhaps the most effective method to improve your aim quickly if you're using aim labs. And I've heard so many testimonies, really positive testimonies, that this has been the best methodology, and I've used it myself to good effect in the past as well. So definitely an advocate for this, and massive shout outs to Low Gravity 56 who put this together. This is for the season 2 benchmarks. So let me explain to you guys first of all what the benchmarks are all about. So in Aim Trainer world, the benchmarks are effectively like your game day, your competition day. It is how you measure your aim, because it's separated into different aiming categories, all of the different aiming categories that are distinct from each other. And obviously switching is a combination of clicking and tracking. And what you have is these tasks which are measured by score. And the score is a great metric to understand your aiming skill, because if you miss, you lose points. If you hit the target, you gain points. And if you can hit the targets more quickly and more accurately as the tasks are getting harder, then you're going to get the most points. And this is a very good representation of the effectiveness of your aiming technique. And so that is why the score exists as a great metric, and why the benchmarks put all of this together for us very neatly, so we can assess ourselves and see how good we're getting or not. Now, you don't just train with the benchmarks. They're not set up this way. You can, and I've done it in the past because I just enjoy the benchmarks, but that's not the most effective way to do this. The reason is because when we're aiming, any kind of aim that we're doing is going to be comprised of varying techniques that we kind of put all together. And then once we put all those together, we're going to then see how it works and how effective the aiming is. If you're just doing these benchmarks, they are pretty hard. And if you're going to try to get new scores, you're going to have to push your skill. Now, pushing your skill in something that's very hard is kind of challenging when you're having to put all of the techniques together to do the task. So the benchmarks, or rather, sorry, the Voltaic daily improvement method has a solution for this. And the solution is, let's create playlists that people can play throughout the week that focus on different categories, where the progression of tasks that have been selected for you to play that are in these playlists are going to address different parts of the technique, the overall technique that is required to perform in these tasks to improve your skill level when you hit the benchmarks, maybe doing it once a week or something. So the question is, which ones do you use? Do you use all of them? How do we figure that out? So if you're a Deadlock person, I think it's really a time and need question. If you have time every day to do all of these, and you really want to improve your aim, like you're very serious about improving mechanics, then I would absolutely play these every week. And what you can do is, Monday, static clicking, Tuesday, dynamic clicking, Wednesday, precise tracking. And these playlists run, I think, around 45 minutes or so. You can obviously, you don't have to do all of them. Obviously, you could do like half. It's really up to you. But if you're taking it really seriously, I would recommend doing the full playlists and doing all the skills if you're really serious about mechanics training. For me, I'm thinking more about what do I think I need, and what do I think is important in Deadlock. So for me, what I think is most important to clean up is going to be switching and tracking. And these are the most dominant skills that you'll find in Deadlock. The static and dynamic clicking or flicking skills, also skill categories, are also very important and relevant. But for me and the heroes that I play, the tracking and switching is going to be more relevant. The switching, especially for me, I find is extremely important just because in general, you're switching your target priority in fights a lot, because fights last for a long time and there's lots of different things that you can possibly be shooting between the creeps, between the buildings, between the enemy heroes as well, and the souls that are coming up into the air. And equally, as I'm playing heroes that have more tracking related, even I would say the burst fire characters, like let's say the shotgun characters like Shiv and Pocket and so on, and even Grey Talon also, I think there is a great need, even with burst fire weapons, to also focus on tracking, because tracking is going to be really consistent. Whereas with burst weapons, when your speed of your fire rate is being altered by enemy abilities or items, that's going to be a pain, because you're not going to be completely sure as to what the timing is for your shots. And typically when you're shooting with burst weapons, there's different ways you can approach aiming with them. So a very popular methodology, which I loved in Quake, is to have your crosshair near an opponent with let's say a railgun, but you let them just do their dodging bullshit, and then you just reactively, when you're ready, you flick to them. So from wherever you are, as opposed to kind of like tracking them and then trying to like click. In this game, it's generally, I think, quite beneficial to generally be tracking, as I said, because of fire rate changes. You can't always be 100% sure when you get into the mid and late game if your fire rate against opposing heroes. But equally, I think it just feels at this point, in my experience, it just feels like a better way to do things, especially with the shotgun characters. So with that said, there's no, with aiming in general, there's no hard and fast rules for anything. It's really about what you find to be most effective. So with that said, what do I want to focus on today, and how am I going to split up my training? Now that we just talked about, what I think are important skills in Deadlock. Actually, one thing I'll say is, which I didn't mention, is in the early laning phase, there's a lot of dynamic clicking and switching as well. That's really important, because you're getting the souls. And sometimes when you're shooting a target, and then there's like a soul that comes up, and if you're, let's say you're an Ivy, you're a Haze, you're a Wraith, you're an Infernus or whatever, you've got the ability to, like, you're spraying down a creep, being able to go from spraying that creep down to then flicking in the air to the path of that orb to instantly kill it is going to gain you edges, because you'll be able to more effectively deny souls from your opponents, as well as collect souls for yourself also. So I think that's actually a very important aiming skill, and it is definitely requires that precision flicking, because you're going to have because the orbs are very small relative to the hero size. Okay, so what do I want to focus on today? I'm going to focus on speed target switching for that very, very reason. So what I'll do now is I'm going to take you through the tasks in this playlist, and I'm going to talk to you about how, or maybe some of the things you could think about, or what you should be focusing on. So I'm just going to go through, as you can see, because there's here's one task, and it'll be repeated two extra times, and it does that for every task. I'm just going to go through each one time and talk to you about it, so that if you are doing this playlist, you'll also get a sense as to what is the purpose of this particular task. Why has LG56 put this in here in his infinite wisdom? Why has he done this? So to start with, you get something that's like a warm-up. So it's going to be very easy. And the point I'm going to make immediately actually is, with switching, you want to be actually moving your crosshair, you want to be focusing on the orb. Let's say I flick to this orb, or I just killed it. Let's say I flick to this orb. Once I'm on this orb and I'm aiming on it and shooting it, and it's gonna be dying, I already want to be looking at the next target before this one's even dead, because I need to create the path that my mouse needs to travel immediately. This is how you get fast in switching, and this is going to make a big difference. And I think aim training players who are very good at this are going to have a huge edge with regards to like the kind of soul collection that you'll see. So this is really about just like warming up. You've got like really big orbs, And so for me, depending on what the type of aiming is, I might switch how I'm actually doing the aiming. So like here, because I can very comfortably do everything with my fingertips, I tend to be I'm actually just fingertipping like almost all of this, fingertipping and wrist. But my arm's gonna have to come in later tasks, and I'll talk about that too. So we're switching, you know, obviously you don't want to leave targets alive, but that's kind of the trick. You want to make sure that you actually do kill them, you know, because that's going to be just wasted points otherwise. And it's just an indication that your technique's not quite as efficient as maybe you would like. Okay, well I can't see right now because of the cat, so that's pretty... You want attention? Well, I'm making a video right now. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Look at this cat. This fluffy cat. Yeah, that hair gets absolutely everywhere. Okay, you're gonna be on the mouse pad. All right then. Okay. All right, so let's go to the to the next task. So we're gonna have speed switch 180 medium. Okay, so you can see it's like, okay, that's 90 degrees. Okay, this is 180 degrees. Okay, so now we've got big sweeping movements. I don't know how I'm going to do this with the cat on the mouse pad, but we'll try. So I'm going to incorporate my arm. And one reason why this is important is because if I try to do this with my fingertips, firstly, I can't really do fingertips as much on like the side movements. That's more of a wrist thing. The wrist is always going to be like more side, and the fingertips is always going to be more adjustments up and down for me. Now, I could do this with my wrist, but what you'll see that will happen is my wrist will go like this. I'll do a flick, and now my wrist is in this position where it's in the end of range. So going from this position, what if I want to shoot something that is also in that direction? You know, that's gonna be very difficult to do that. So what we instead want is we want to make sure that when we're doing our flick, our arm, if we flick with our arm, it allows us to be neutral in our neutral position. When I do this big flick over here, my arm is in a neutral position. So I can make any adjustments with my wrist or my fingertips. And then I can flick over here. The arm has a lot more freedom of movement when it comes to these bigger spaces. So generally speaking, it's a good practice to incorporate arm if you're not already. If you're a fast sense player like I am, and you can do stuff without incorporating arm, it's important to make sure that you try to practice incorporating it. And what really sucks and why people don't do it, why I didn't do it for a long time, is because it feels really shit. If you're not practiced with it, it just feels like you're just missing constantly, and you can't like aim. It's not as fast as everything else you do, so it just takes time to kind of build that skill up. But this is what we're talking about. We're trying to isolate skills and techniques in aim trainers to try to make sure that we can kind of improve. So this is day one for me, and I'm just doing the instructional. So hopefully I'll be able to show some good progress videos for you guys, so you can kind of see that I'm making some improvements. And it's interesting too, because the aim trainers are important for raw mouse skill, but and like cleaning up your technique and stuff. But at the same time, you know, it's hard to substitute game time. And I would never suggest that if you're actually trying to improve at the game, you know, that you're spending enormous amounts of time in aim trainers, which is why I said with regards to these playlists, you know, you don't necessarily have to do like everything at once, but you could split it up. You could do like half the time in 20 minutes instead. You could do like, let's say 3 days a week instead of like 6. There's lots of, and just focus on like 3 categories instead of all of them. You know, there's lots of ways you can break it up, but you just want it to make sense for your particular training. How about we scoot you a little bit over here? Yeah, how's that? Good job. All right. We you know, if you guys have cats, you know how it is. You can't, you know, you gotta be careful. You can't move the cat. Okay, so shoving them mic into my face. This is going really well. Okay, so next thing that we're going to be looking at is, okay, VT.static medium. Okay, so the change that we have here is the targets are very small, and I don't think they move. Yeah, they don't move. So this is basically like a static task, because there is this, in the switching, there is a static component. How good is your static skill? So you can see how like wide, how far apart these targets are as well. So this is another situation where you very likely have to use arm. And because you're having to stay on the target afterwards, you need to be quite stable after your micro correction, if you need one, which you probably will. But you need to be quite stable. And so that means that you need to have your tension under control. So on the first flick, because you've got to travel quite a big distance, you need quite a bit of tension in your arm, depending on your setup. For me, it's not that much because I have a extremely light mouse and extremely fast pad and all the skates in the world on it. So micro corrections are actually very tough for me because I have this issue where the stability is hard to find because there's very little friction in my particular setup. So here I kind of have to slow down a bit, but I want that snappy first flick, and I'll keep my tension like reasonably low so I can like have fluidity after each flick. And that's kind of the point here is, you know, you're trying to train yourself to just get those clean lines on the flicks, get a micro correction, and you're always treating this one as a static task, and it's adding in the element that you have to, you know, hold mouse 1 or, you know, whatever you have set to fire down on the target. So it's introducing new elements slowly but surely. Okay, so now we go from VT static dots, which we just played, to the normal one. So this is going to be the same, but they're going to be moving around now. So as you can see, they're moving around. So now you can see you got to be able to, after you flick, you got to have enough tension that you can still control it, but you have to have very, you know, less tension than when you initially flick, because you need to be able to kind of follow the target. I'm not doing a very good job here, but that's okay, as this is just an instructional. So again, the challenge here is when you flick, you got to be able to like instantly kind of speed match the target. You got to have the smoothness to make sure that you're able to follow the target off of the flick. And also you want to be reading the entire map, because you want to see kind of like where the targets are going and what, you know, when are they changing direction. Because with situations like this, oftentimes you're kind of actually flicking ahead of the target to an extent, because you're allowing the target to move into your crosshair. So to do that effectively, you need to be able to see which direction it's going. So you're reading the movement of the target. Movement reading is a very important aspect in aiming. And so having training in that's pretty important. You can see I have to like really tidy up after I flick onto the target. I'm having to adjust my speed to ensure that I'm like able to stay on it smoothly and just like kill it cleanly. So I'm just using a combination of arm for these bigger flicks, which I'm kind of getting used to again because I haven't done this in a long time. And then I'm trying to use my fingertips and a little bit of wrist to try and make sure that I can be smooth on that target. You can see my score is pretty bad compared to whenever I'd last did this, which was a very long time ago. Okay, so we're incrementally increasing the difficulty, and now it's 360. So now you need a lot of arm. And so you're doing really big flicks on small targets. So you have, you know, most people have a lot of tension coming off the big flicks. And to be able to smoothly track, you have to come off that tension because you need the fluidity that comes with lower tension. And that lower tension also allows you to like quickly move on to the next target. If you're very stiff after the first flick, it's gonna be hard to micro correct, and it's gonna be a lot harder to flick off like fluidly. Hopefully I can have like a good... But yeah, I was gonna say, like, hopefully I have like a good little segment there so I can kind of demonstrate that a little bit better. But this is good because this is going to be obviously the starting point. Okay, so we got VT sphere switch. So this is going to be similar to one of the actual tasks that is in the benchmark, because one of them is called sphere switch. So you can see they're moving a bit faster and they're just moving horizontally here. So this is kind of what we were talking about. The cat's actually like trying to aim train with me right now, trying to actually like hit the monitor. So here it's a very similar situation. The targets will die more quickly, but we want to try to flick ahead of the target if possible. Makes our lives easier. And obviously being able to be like very smooth on the target is what we're trying to achieve. And managing how much arm and wrist that we use, so we're always able to stay, not necessarily always in neutral, but we're always able to avoid the end range lockout that fucks us from transitioning from one to the other. Cat's like actually hitting the orbs as well. That's actually kind of funny. Oh my god, I can't see because the cat's like If you guys can see this. See, she's training as well. Oh, good job, Neo. Good job. Okay, enough of this one. I think she really likes this one too much. Oh my God, do you guys even have aim training cats? Okay, so we're gonna go from sphere switch with speed focus, and there's gonna be probably smoothness focus. Yeah. Okay. So very predictable because it makes sense. So, ooh, this is great. So the targets get even smaller. So it's gonna be very hard to have accuracy, and then we're moving really fast too. So compared to the very first task, you can see how this can scale up. And also you can see these heal up. So if I can, okay, thank you, Neo. Yeah, move out the way, thank you. So you can see that they heal up. So you get punished for not actually properly tracking them, which I think is amazing. So you have to have smoothness, like flick into smoothness on a target that's moving pretty quickly. So you can definitely see that. For me, this is a lot more of a struggle. But you can see I'm trying to like flick ahead of the target so I can kind of micro adjust onto it if necessary, or just kind of catch it. But you can see this is why I need to do tracking. My tracking is not amazing right now. So you can see lots of improvements here that can be made for me. And this is the intermediate one, so I don't know if I got like master complete on any intermediate scores. You can quickly check actually. So as I go to the benchmarks here, what did I get? Okay, so I've actually done pretty well in a lot of the tracking and switching categories. It's the Sky Switch, which has been evading me, and also Axi Track, and Steady Track, and Suave Track. These are the ones that I haven't got master on. Okay, so all right, maybe after doing these benchmarks, I'll be able to achieve it this over the next month or so. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. We've kind of got the idea there, where we're focusing on just the smoothness, because it's very, again, like I just love the LG56. Like he's telling you what he wants you to do, because he's punishing you if you miss the targets, if you can't maintain that smoothness. So okay, so now we can go to VT sphere switch smooth medium. So okay, sphere switch intermediate hard. Okay, so this is when LG56 puts in harder versions of the task than is in the benchmark, so that you're kind of forced to try to battle with something that's a lot harder than you're actually going to need to compete on, which is a great. This is how a lot of training works, by the way. If you prepare your people, no matter what like industry we're talking about, if you prepare them for something that's a lot harder than the thing they're actually going to be doing, they're going to find that thing a lot less oppressive. This is why, for example, like the Navy SEALs, they'll have like the most brutal training drills, because they have to prepare for like combat, and combat's extremely intense and dynamic, and so they need to try to not just replicate that, but create like harder versions of that if they can, so that the SEALs are going through training that's actually going to not just really challenge them, but also make the real thing feel easier and more comfortable, because they've done harder stuff. And so you can really get that feeling with aim training. But you can see like a struggle here for me is micro-correcting onto the target and then kind of maintaining the tracking. So definitely not a great job there. So it's hard, and then, okay, this is the actual task that you would play in the benchmark. This is the actual benchmark task. So you've done all these progressive things to try to work on different parts of the technique. We just focused on the speed. We focused on like large horizontal movements. We focused on just the static. We focused on like lots of different parts of these techniques. And now we finally get to what the actual task is. And usually by this point, you're actually going to like look pretty good on these tasks, because you've just done like the harder version. And you've just spent all this time kind of practicing these skills that should hopefully help you out in getting a good score. And picking your pathing is kind of important too. That's like the element I think of like strategy that can exist is there's good aim, but there is a small amount of, okay, you got to be like sensible with your pathing. And you can see like leaving them alive is actually really punishing for your score. I'm curious how this score is going to look, because it should be probably horrendous compared to my normal scores. Yeah, pretty bad. So there you go. And then after that, what do we have? Okay, a bunch of intermediate, and then we get some sky switch. This is the one that I struggled the most with, but it also like looked the best for me. So sky switch jumbo medium. So you get like a bigger version of sky switch here. So sky switch is this. They don't move very fast, but they have not a lot of HP either, actually. You can see again, like need to get a better rhythm than leaving them alive. When you see people that are like really insane at these things, at these tasks, you'll be pretty impressed, I think, if you've never seen that before. But again, really trying to focus on making sure I'm looking at the next target already before I'm finishing the first one. That's why I'm actually missing some kills here and not staying long enough on targets, because I'm trying to prioritize the speed, which is obviously important. And the reason why the targets are being missed in that way is because jumbo Pokeball is because my accuracy is not great. My accuracy is not perfect enough. Because if it were, and I had like the right tension management, the right fluidity, then I'd be on the orb, and the timing would be consistent, because I wouldn't have to just like be a little bit on the orb, a little bit off the orb, and then fully on the orb. It would just be I'm on the orb. Okay, so let's go on to this next one. Okay, so this is trying to set us up for Pokeball. So again, we've got a similar situation happening here where we are focusing on this is like much more staticky. But you can see it's like punishing you for the same thing, like flicking away too early. You have to like really make sure your micro correction is on the target, or you get really punished. Kind of, for some reason, enjoying this one. I don't know why. The vertical flicks with arms are the most difficult for me, because I'm so reliant on fingertips for anything related to that. So it tends to be difficult for me. Okay, so wait, is this the same thing? Yes. Static. Okay. Evo Viscose. Okay. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, so it's a very similar situation. Let's try to... That's leaving so many alive. And I would advise like trying not to like habitually restart like this. This is just like a reflex that I have. I think a lot of people will suffer from this. So, you know, otherwise you'll end up spending like 5 minutes playing like task number 1, which you don't want to do. Alright, okay, that's enough of that. Right, okay, so pretty much the same kind of thing. Then we move on to a speed focus. So because the two switching, we have sphere switch, which we built up to, and now we're building up to sky switch, which is one I've found the most trouble with. It's a speed sky switch, so the targets are dying like more quickly. So this enables you to actually go faster than you can in Sky Switch because the targets will die faster. So here you like have a really big focus on speed, which I'm not really achieving very well. But let's just like move forward, as I don't want to make this video super long. Okay, so we focus on the speed, and then we go into smoothness focus. So the targets get really small. And you can see why this is a lot more helpful than just like grinding the same task over and over and over again, trying to like force a different score. Because you're really, it like forces you to focus on your precision here. And having smoothness as well when you're moving the mouse very slightly in one direction. Okay, so smoothness, focus, and then what do we get? We get the intermediate hard on Sky Switch. So we actually are getting the hard version of Sky Switch now where the orbs are smaller. So we play this a little bit for a few times. So if you play this like 3 times, you're gonna feel pretty good. So actually, this reminds me of a trick I used to do in like 2003. Jesus Christ. In Quake, where I would watch a demo at like 2-3 times speed, sometimes more, and I'd try to like, I'd let my brain like really focus on following it, and I would do that for like 30 minutes, and then I would go into a game, and then for like the first like 15 minutes, my brain's not like is like not adjusted, so it feels like everything's moving in slow motion, and it's like it's so interesting how it's way easier to aim. I'd always be way better at aiming for that like 15-20 minutes afterwards. Funny how the brain works like that, how it kind of adapts. Okay, so we've done that, and then we're going to move on to the actual task itself. And so we're getting to the end of the playlist. This is the very last task now, which is the actual benchmark task. Sky Switch Intermediate. Okay, so let's give it a go. I haven't done the playlist like properly, and I've been talking to you guys, so this is probably not going to look as sick for me, but oftentimes people will find that their score will like naturally improve by the time they get to this point. Let's give it another go. Leaving too many alive. Okay, so not super horrendous, but as you can see, it's still 150 away from my high score, which is, I think 2900 is what's needed to get Master Complete. So, okay, but not amazing. But there you go. There you have it. There's the aim training process I'm going to be undergoing, and I'm going to focus on the tracking, and I'm going to try to hit 3 or 4 of these a week. And in terms of the other aspects to the process, I'm doing my VOD review. I'm doing VOD review almost at least like one every day, and I'm trying to kind of learn as much as I can about the game, and also putting stuff into practice. I'm currently trying to round out my hero pool. I know Infernus is definitely in there, which is probably no surprise to a lot of you that know the game. but I'm trying to figure out who else to add. I think Shiv is definitely going to be one also that's in that 3 for me that I'll end up playing. And I think I'll probably pick someone else that's pretty tracking dominant, because that aiming style feels very comfortable for me. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of this type, please let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers.